When family business owners talk about conflict, they often focus on the people involved. But in our experience, most conflict in family businesses isn't caused by bad intentions or difficult personalities. It's caused by unclear roles, blurred decision making, and a lack of governance. So let's meet our hypothetical case study. It's the Carter family company. Here's the background. The Carter family owns a second-generation manufacturing business based in the Southeast. The company was founded by their father, Bill Carter. Bill's two sons, Mark and David, both own equal shares of the business and are actively involved in leadership. On paper, arrangement looks fair. This is how the business operates today. Mark is focused on growth. He wants to invest in new equipment, expand into adjacent markets, and professionalize the organization. His brother David, however, is focused on stability. He takes pride in the quality of the work, the long-tenured employees, and the way things have always been done. Years ago, the brothers agreed that they would make all major decisions by consensus, believing that this would preserve harmony and fairness within the family. On the surface, Mark and David are respectful. They don't raise their voices. They avoid direct confrontation. Behind the scenes, though, frustration is building. Meetings drag on without resolution. Important decisions get delayed or revisited weeks later. Senior leaders don't know whose direction to follow. So if you were advising the Carter family tomorrow, what is the first governance change you would recommend?
Governance, the way we define it, is how business makes its decisions and how it handles conflict. So that's right where I'd start is, how do they go about making decisions? In the overview that they're making decisions consensually. That's tough to do. I know it would help create harmony and it sounds fair, but trying to make all decisions consensual is very challenging to do. What we would do is we'd go in and we would help them understand that there's more ways to make decisions than just consensus. We would explain the different approaches that are available to them: autocratic approach, a democratic approach, a collaborative approach, and of course, their consensual approach. You have the autocrat approach. In other words, I'm the king, I get to make the decision. You have the consensual approach, which is we are all going to agree. We have to have 100% agreement in order to move forward. Then we have democratic approach. We're going to vote on it. Whatever decision or whatever methodology gets the most vote, that's what we're going to do. And then you have the collaborative approach, which is kind of like a autocratic approach with an ad on it. In other words, there's one decision maker, they own that decision, but they reach out to subject matter experts to try to be influenced, to gather more information. So there's collaboration going, and the people that they're collaborating with know that that is the decision owner. They're not going to make the decision, they're just going to influence. Sometimes in that collaborative process, you might get consensual. Many times you don't. The decision owner still makes the calls. What we've learned over time in most successful businesses, they default to a collaborative approach in their decision making. In other words, there's well-defined homes for each decision. Decision making is decentralized. It's not centralized into one person or entity. So that helps. And that decision maker is responsible for it. They seek out input from subject matter experts. Is something that is where they need to go to is a collaborative approach. That will help alleviate a lot of problems.
What's happening beneath the surface emotionally for both Mark and David?
Beneath the surface, they're feeling very conflicted. They both feel passionately, like you said, Mark feels passionately about growth, David feels passionate about stability. They feel like that is the pressing issue and where it's important for the business to focus right now. So they feel passionately about that. They likely also feel very passionately about their brother relationship and their familial relationship and how all of that plays out and the impact that that has. So they're wanting to honor that, and at the same time they're like, but this is the best direction for the business. They're likely feeling this push and this pull of like, okay, I should double down here, but that's going to then in turn lead to this situation. And like we're discussing, there's some serious conflict avoidance that seems to be going on and some very unclear decision making that seems to be going on. And to kind of build upon this idea of wanting all decisions to be consensual, that can often lead to what we call the fifth way to make a decision, which is no decision. Oftentimes, when you're going for consensus and you're hitting a wall, you just keep pushing off making the decision. And you gotta make a decision. Some of the ways that we have found are the best approach to helping David and Mark with this. Number one is if they can really get clear and understand what makes them tick. Oftentimes, a behavioral assessment is a great way to do this, to understand what motivates action and decision making in each of them so that they can get a better perspective as to why Mark is so growth focused and why David is so invested in making sure that the business is stable. Getting clarity around that, getting information, feeling informed on that can really help them leverage their strengths and leverage the areas where they need to get clear on who's going to be making which decisions so that they can move to that more collaborative approach in their decision making, feel more comfortable in their governance structure. So I would say that's a great place to start helping with that internal friction and conflict that's going on. And that is for sure bleeding out and is transparent in the organization, either directly through just their interactions or indirectly through just the business not being able to have any decisions being made to get that continuous improvement.
You know, Brandy, you talked about how Mark is committed to growing the business. So he's really future oriented. David is kind of holding back. You know, how do I protect the legacy of the business? So it really gets to what the real issue is there's no, at least in this case study, that doesn't seem to be a unified commitment what they're trying to do, right? You got one brother pulling the whole back, protect dad's legacy, and you got this other brother pushing to grow or to scale or to move forward. That's not necessarily a governance issue, but it is definitely a strategy issue. You can't move a business forward, so hence it impacts decision making. I think that's another area that, and you mentioned that briefly, but you know, the why of the company. Why are we even here? Where are we going to go? And then how are we going to get there? Once, if that can get declared, you know, that anchors all these other difficult conversations because you can always come back to, well, we said in 10 years, this is what we're trying to become, and this is what we needed to achieve in the next 3 years. Does this decision align to it or does it conflict with it? That really helps settle down the conflict.
Well, too, and I think recognizing that if they can get into a healthy mindset with this and get really clear on who owns which decisions, you've got someone that wants stability and you've got someone that wants growth. If you can really optimize those two, like your working relationship, then that's great. And you figure out how to balance those two because that's a great way to propel a business forward, right? We want to remain stable, but we want to have growth as well, right? So if they can figure out that dynamic together, obviously in the best rosy picture, the sky's the limit. They're still going to face challenges, but the more that they can recognize the strengths that each of them brings to the table, they can leverage those and take the business where it needs to go. And really kind of it's less about them individually and their egos and more about this is what's best for the company and the organization and we are leveraging these strengths and we are taking it to the top.